The lack of information is where the biggest problems exist inside the construction business. I was that chaotic business owner. I was running around trying to figure out where I was going to put out fires. If I had 10 fingers and 10 toes, I was plugging the holes everywhere I could and trying to hang on for dear life. That's the difference between struggling and being successful. Everyone's going to struggle. It's not an either or proposition. It's what do you do when you start to struggle. Bringing in the right talent does not mean hiring all the time. It means getting the right talent to give you the right information. At the end of the day, you're going to have to make the call as the business owner or the leader, whether it's yourself, your team, or you're running the whole business. Take the time, come up with one problem you have right now, one struggle that you're dealing with, and apply these principles to it. I promise you it'll make a big difference in your world. Welcome everybody to the next episode of the Construction MF'ers podcast. My name is Scott Peper. I am the CEO and founder of Mobilization Funding, and today we're going on a solo episode where I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how to make smart construction decisions even when you're overwhelmed. I'm not going to sit here and tell you how to make smart construction site decisions, but I am going to talk to you how to make good decisions from a leadership perspective inside a construction business, sharing some stories of ways and things we've seen people do wrong and ways we've seen them overcome them. And I'm going to share some action tips with you. So I want to start with a story which comes directly from a great book I recommend you all read, which is called The 𝗖𝗵, The 𝗖𝗵 Revisited. And it's about Sarah the baker. Sarah was an amazing baker. She spent so much time in the kitchen. She loved it. It was her passion. She made the best baked goods that her family and friends would never stop raving about them. They encouraged her so much so to actually open her own bakery, which she did. She spent all that time making those muffins, making those baked goods, and people came in and she couldn't keep things in the shelf. Quickly, she had to hire some help. She first hired some help at the front of the house, then she hired some help at the back of the house. Next thing she knew, she was running a business. And when she started running that business, Sarah didn't become a baker anymore. She became a business owner. Soon she was out of the kitchen, she was out of the front of the office, she was in both places, and she was even in her back office doing a lot of work. The reason I tell you that story is I think it directly relates to construction. Most construction entrepreneurs are technicians. They get into the trade with their hands, they learn how to do something, they're doing it really well, and somehow, somewhere, they get that push to either start their own business or sometimes they're even forced to start their own business with failures from a company they were working at. The part that's really missing always is that operational component. And that operational component is key. See, the whole premise of the book is in order to be successful, you need all three components in the business. You need the entrepreneur, the go-getter, the one who takes the risk and the challenges. You need the technician for the product or the service that you're going to provide. And you need the manager, the who's going to operate, create the systems, create the flow, help give you information and access to that information so the decisions can be made. Rarely is someone all three. Most people have a dominant trait, and they usually have two. But if you think about Sarah, it's directly relatable to construction because technician and entrepreneur are two things that are common in the construction world. But the manager, the operator, the finance side, it's just not a common trait that most people get into construction with. And that's where the problem lies. The lack of information is where the biggest problems exist inside the construction business. It's not that part where you become overwhelmed and everything's going on and you're freaking out and you're trying to figure out how am I going to make these good decisions. It's not that you're incapable of the decision. It's not that you will always make a bad decision. The problem is the information is not there for you to see the whole field and make a good decision. That's the issue. So what we're going to talk about today is how to set up the table so that you can have the right information in front of you when you need it in a format that you can use it so that you can make effective decisions. And what I'm here to tell you is I see it time and time again, great construction business owners who are running a business who come to us with something like problematic and hair on fire. When they have the information in front of them organized in a clean fashion, they make great decisions all the time. So let's talk about how to tackle that. Well, if you're walking into an unprepared environment, it's very difficult to be successful. Let's relate it to the site. If you walk onto a dirty site, unorganized, not good flow, not good information, we all know what happens. Think about that inside your business. If you walk into your office without the right reports, without the right information, without the right flow of information, without certain responsibilities and actions being outlined directly, it's going to be very difficult for you to be able to make decisions. It's going to feel chaotic. It's going to feel like you don't have the answers. So setting the table is a term that I like to use. Even inside my own business here, very often early on, and for many of the beginning years, I was that chaotic business owner. I was running around trying to figure out where I was going to put out fires. If I had 10 fingers and 10 toes, I was plugging the holes everywhere I could and trying to hang on for dear life. It wasn't until I was able to find my operator, my manager type person that could help me organize the thoughts in my head into a system and a process that could actually set the table for me. All of a sudden, after finding that talent and that person and getting that information out of my head, I'm walking into meetings with them and the team with the table set. I had not only all of the right pieces of information identified, but they were in an organized and clean fashion that we could all look at them together, have a discussion, and execute a decision. If you were to remove 3 or 4 of the things in a setup that needed 8, and 50% of that information is now not there, it's 50% more difficult to make a decision. You're now guessing. And that uncomfortableness comes from that lack of information and not knowing. And so you're never going to know what the future holds, but you should always know what information's in front of you so that you can make the best choice. And so setting the table is a requirement. How do you go about doing that? First, you want to identify the information that you need in order to effectively make a decision on whatever the topic is. Again, think about it like a site. If you're on site and you're trying to decide if you're going to make a change to some of the construction drawings, you know the information you need. You know where to go get it, and you know how to make that decision. Why? Because your technical expertise resides on that construction project. That's something you're well aware of. On the business owner side, if you need to make a decision like, should I buy this equipment or lease it? Do I put more employees on this? How much cash is it going to take? If you don't have access to that type of information, or you don't know what information you need, that's the time to go out and find a mentor, find a video, find a podcast, find something based on the topic that you have, somebody else in your experience, in your network that's farther ahead than you, that's gone through this hurdle than you, and ask them, when they make these decisions, what types of information do they make those decisions off of? What type of reports do they use? Then task your individual team members or yourself with compiling that information. That compilation of the information, first the identification, then the compilation of it, that's what I call setting the table. Now you're adequately prepared to sit down and effectively make those decisions. As your business grows and scales, there becomes bigger tables. There becomes more place settings. There becomes more people involved. You don't know everything anymore. Whether you're an owner of the business or you're leading the business or you're leading a department in the business or even whether you're leading yourself. As businesses grow, it doesn't matter what form of leadership you're in, including if you're just only managing yourself. You must make sure you can get access to the information that you need, identify the information you need, and then task yourself or the right people to get you that info. Once it's organized in a format that you can read, see, and understand clearly, you can now effectively make a decision. Now, when there's more people around the table, this is where you have to start thinking about, do I have the right talent around me? Do I have the right experience around me? Are the people making the decisions at this particular juncture in the room that need to be in the room? And if you aren't the person that understands what's going on and you don't know, those are the times where you want to start thinking about that next level talent. Who has experience that I can bring on board to help me go from where we are now to where we want to go? Find someone that's already taken that journey. Find someone that's already been through that path. Either learn from them, hire them, or some combination of both. That is a great way and a great tool for yourself to use when you're trying to adequately make decisions on how you're going to advance a very fast growing business or if you're planning to grow very fast. Those types of things can help you not only avoid mistakes, but keep them from happening altogether or identify them early in the process so you can make shifts without having to create all the pain that might go associated to them. All right, I want to define for you the difference between struggling and success. And I'm going to do that by telling you a story. The story exists of two folks who worked for a large general contractor in Texas. We'll use the real example, okay? They started out, one was a project manager, one was a superintendent. And they worked diligently for this general contractor for years. They got lots of experience putting different sites together. They got lots of experience doing some self-performance and scoping and framing and drywall and even some demo. Unfortunately, they also got some experience in watching a business fail. They watched that general contractor grow too fast. They watched that general contractor take on too many self-performance scopes of work. They watched that general contractor make mistake after mistake, and unfortunately, it brought that business down. Well, as bad as that seemed, it also forced these two gentlemen into the entrepreneur path. They created and started their own company. They had experience. They knew how to work with subcontractors. They knew how to bid work. They knew how to manage the work, and they knew how to operate it. They had so much experience from all those different jobs that they felt really good about jumping out, having those relationships, building a business together, and being able to succeed. And you know what? They did. In the first year, they did a few $100,000 worth of work. By year 2, they were doing over $2 million worth of work. By year 3, they were on track to do $4 and $5 million worth of work. But that's when the problem showed up. They were effective between $0 and $3 million worth of revenue. But as soon as they had to start hiring other project superintendents, they couldn't subcontract all the work out. They couldn't just work with the relationships they had before. And all those little dynamics and changes came into play. It became difficult and they started to struggle. This is the point where they had to pivot, because this is the point where those things they didn't know, those operational things, how do you scale your systems internally? What information do I need to make decisions? How are these jobs going to cash flow? All this started to show up for them. Fortunately for them, we worked with them closely and early on. We were able to help them with the cash flow tools. We were able to introduce them to different accounting firms that were construction related and not their friends or family. We were able to introduce them to the attorneys that helped them modify their documents and change some of their structures and what they were putting in place so that if and when they did have problems, they knew what they were going to be and they could mitigate against them. That's the difference between struggling and being successful. Everyone's going to struggle. It's not an either or proposition. It's what do you do when you start to struggle? Do you identify that I'm struggling and it's not my problem? It's not an ego thing. I'm just approaching a new territory. I'm approaching something that I've never done before, and now I need to know how to figure it out. That subtle humility that you can have and that awareness where you're driving hard and you have all that gumption, but yet you also have that humility to know that you're approaching a territory because you start to feel that struggle and you reach out for help. Those are the types of decisions that will save you years of pain and mistakes. So think about that story of these two gentlemen in Texas who are now running a very successful $5 to $8 million business 5 years in. They're doing really well. They have the right systems in place, and they're now ready to scale even beyond that. Now, let's talk about the actionable steps that you need to make this pivot from struggling to success, from struggling to triggering the right information. All right, first and foremost, you have to identify the key informational needs for whatever the decision that you're making. The way to do that is take a step back. Take a step back from the struggle, assess where you're at, assess the situation, feel what's actually happening to you, whether it's project related, whether it's multiple projects, whether it's in bidding and estimating, whether it's in you're too worried if you don't bid enough work, you're not going to have enough work. Whatever the scenario is, just identify the key pieces of information that you need to make an adequate and perfect decision. Now, don't think about the things that you either have access to. Think about if in a perfect world you could have all the information you need to make the best choice, write that information out, write it out. Find a way to go get it. Even if there's certain pieces that you don't have internally already and you know it, write them down because you might be able to go find that information somewhere else. Okay, number 2, bring in the right talent. That does not mean go out and hire everybody. It might just mean simply Reach out to mentors, reach out to fellow colleagues, reach out to your peer group, reach out to internal networks. Maybe it's coaching groups, maybe it's peer groups, whoever it may be. Maybe it's your financial lender, your accountant, your lawyer, professional services, your bonding agent. Let them know what the problem and the struggle is. Ask them if they have any current clients that have gone through that before, or if they've experienced that, and see if they'll introduce you. Bringing in the right talent does not mean hiring all the time. It means getting the right talent to give you the right information. We just talked about a few of the places you could go do that, and that's a key piece. All right, number 3, establish clear communication channels with yourself, with your peer group, with your team and your employees. Make sure that anyone and everyone can come to you with these decisions. Don't be afraid to put your team, whether it's 3 or 4 people, even if they don't have experience in these particular matters, don't be afraid to bring them in. Explain to them what you're trying to contemplate, explain to them the situation, and see if their creative minds can create something with you that will be a viable solution. Even if it's just the first phase of that, where you can kind of get some analysis, you can kind of get some ideas, and you're bouncing those off these peer groups or your other mentors. Great way to do those things. Open, clear communication is the exact way to create an environment where you're going to be successful in making decisions, as well as identifying the information. All right, the last thing, you want to practice making proactive decisions, okay? It's easy to react. It's easy to feel the things as you start going. A key function is you must just go, okay? I don't want to tell you to sit and wait and analyze till the day is over, okay? But you do need to sit back and be urgent, work with consistent pace, but you also need to make an effective decision, and that takes a little bit of time. So start the process, but think through how you're going to make these decisions. When you make those decisions, you want to make as many proactive decisions as possible and not be reactive. And the way to do that is setting up the table as we discussed. So don't be afraid if you have to pause for a second, reassess the land, take a step back, see where you're at, collect some information over the next 24, 48 hours, and then commit to making a decision by a specific date in the future. Maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's 2 days from now. Once you do that, you can still work with the same urgency, and that can help you lead to more proactive decision making instead of getting stuck and having to react. We've talked now about how to make smart construction decisions, even when you're overwhelmed and in the fight. We talked about the entrepreneurial E-Myth book about 𝗖𝗹𝗲. There's a ton of analogies in there, construction. You'll totally understand them. Think about that. It's okay to give yourself some grace. We talked about the problem being not having the right information and access to the right information. So setting the table becomes a vital part of avoiding this struggle. We talked about bringing in the right talent around you. That doesn't mean hiring. That means getting the right talent around you to make an effective decision. So information and people to make a right collective decision. At the end of the day, you're going to have to make the call as the business owner or the leader, whether it's yourself, your team, or you're running the whole business. But what is important is you do not have to make that decision all by yourself with only the information you have at hand. So access that information, set the table, determine what pieces of information you need, and then lay it out. And when you are laying out that information, don't think about the information you only have. Think about if I could have access to all the information in the world I want in order to make this decision, what would it be? And when you don't limit yourself to what you already have available, but you limit yourself to no limits, you'll be surprised at what information you come up with and where you can go get it. We talked about the difference between what success and struggle looks like in the contractor I explained to you from Texas, how they grew, what they grew with, and what they did to overcome it. And we also talked about the actionable steps for you to take. So think about the problems and the struggles that you either have right now, that you know you're about to face, or maybe it's the ones that keep you up at night. Map out what you need to know, how you want to know it, and who, if in a perfect world, you could get that information from. Make that proactive decision, and you'll be shocked at how much easier your life can get, and you'll avoid the struggle, pain that goes with the struggle. You're never going to avoid the struggles. That's part of the business. But you don't have to try to guess how to get out of the struggle. You can make proactive decisions inside it. And that's what I'm trying to encourage you to do today. So please take the time right now, share a comment. Let me know what one of your problems are. Let me know what these struggles look like. Let's let this collective community bond together and share some information. Tell me where your peer groups are. Tell me whether you agree or not. Link up here and find out a way that you can add value in these comments to help everyone else, whether it's information you know, topics you know, or whether it's a great place to go access information so you can make good, effective, proactive decisions too. And if you got a great story, those are even better. Lastly, take the time, come up with one problem you have right now, one struggle that you're dealing with, and apply these principles to it. I promise you it'll make a big difference in your world. It'll make a big difference in your world. It'll get you some more sleep at night, and you'll feel a lot better about how you go about making those choices. I hope you guys like this video. Share it with your friends. Let us know what you think, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. God bless you.